Well, in my last video on consciousness, I talked about fields of awareness and how consciousness itself was this intermediary to action. Because once proper action takes hold, consciousness just kind of fades into the background. Lately, what's been going viral is a sentiment among tech bros, in particular the egg-headed type, that introspection is very useless and does more to harm us than to help us, which doesn't surprise me they would have that kind of sentiment. So I'd like to talk about this idea of introspection, why it's valuable and why they're wrong, and what its relationship is to consciousness itself. I think consciousness itself is we have such a limiting understanding of it that when we speak of consciousness, we're often speaking about very different things. On the one hand, we might be speaking about awareness. On the other, we might be speaking about perception. On the other, we might be speaking about the inner experience that comes through the analysis of those perceptions, otherwise known as qualia. There are all kinds of layers to what we mean when we say consciousness, and they're all completely different things. And one of those things is introspection, and the ability to turn your focus inward and self-assess. I think perhaps what these tech bros might be wanting to speak about but aren't doing so is the idea of rumination, which is a different thing altogether. Rumination meaning where you dwell on negative thought patterns. I've spoken about that at length in other videos from a different channel. And we have to get our terms straight. Rumination, I would agree, has very negative effects on our psyche. And to a large extent, unfortunately, therapy tends to focus on rumination. It gets you to talk and dwell on pain. It gets you to reinforce all the neural pathways that are associated with negative feelings. What's the only person that benefits is the therapist, because it keeps you coming back for more, right? It turns pain into a kind of addiction in a way, where you don't feel unless you're feeling sadness and suffering. And this is almost taking what I was saying in my previous video about suffering to an extreme, into an opposite extreme. Whereas rather than trying to avoid suffering altogether, how about we reinforce it and make you feel even more pain and develop an identity with your pain? That is also wrong. So, yes, I would agree. Rumination is not very helpful. Introspection is a very different thing. And And that is when you dip your toes into rumination and you acknowledge first and foremost there's something there that's causing me pain. You can then turn around inward and ask yourself, why does it hurt? Ask yourself whether or not it should hurt. Ask yourself whether or not this is a pain I must address. All kinds of questions can arise that can lead toward action. Ultimately, like I mentioned in my last video on consciousness, to a large extent, the purpose of consciousness is like a spotlight, trying to identify the thing and direct you in the right direction. And so, introspection is very valuable if you can use it to help you steer, right? To help you steer your life and your own thoughts in the right direction. And so to the tech bros out there, I would say maybe you have not been introspecting enough, honestly, because you seem to operate on autopilot and you just go wherever the opportunities are. You're like those dwarves in Lord of the Rings that just mined a little too deeply. They just couldn't stop, could they? They had to mine and mine and mine and mine until they were engulfed by the demons they unearthed. And this is the value of introspection, that as you move in a direction, you're always looking and perceiving, hopefully with clarity, the results of what you're doing. And pausing sometimes and asking yourself, is this the right way? Is this the right direction? Did I make the right choices back there? Or do I need to change course? Something that I believe our tech bros severely lack is that ability. Frankly, not just them. I mean, it's really anybody who succumbs to the temptations of power and wealth, of easy power and easy wealth, tends to be overcome by a demonic, opportunistic force that overrides their consciousness itself and leads them to say things like rumination is just or introspection is just a recent invention of therapy, which couldn't be further from the truth. Just ask any philosopher to give you a brief introduction on a little bit of history about the history of thought, the history of logic itself, for which you tech bros wouldn't even have things like math to begin with. All of our sciences have their foundation in philosophy and in the ability of the human mind to introspect and question even the assumptions of its own thought process. So no, I would say introspection is quite valuable. Don't let the tech bros distance you further still from your own humanity and get you to operate like an automaton, moving blindly, obeying orders or the whims of your pleasure-seeking centers. They are fundamentally hedonists. Like I said in my last video, they hate pain above all things. And so that means they love pleasure above all things. And that's what they are trying to sell you. Hedonism. That's my rant for the day. Let me know what you think. anything value come out of introspection for you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.